Hey machine knitters, we have a super quick project for you today to help you get to know your machine better. And if you've never used your ribber, this is a great way to start out using your ribber. But if you don't have a ribber, you don't need one to complete this project either. The thing I love about these pumpkins is they're super quick and easy to make. They can be done on any gauge machine. You can add cabling or you can add some ribbing and you can make it look however you'd like. You can even add stripes. I'm going to use some super bulky yarn today to see if my bulky machine can handle a US number 6 weighted yarn. Let's go! Knit a few rows of waste yarn from 21 left to 22 right, end on the left, and then cut your yarn. You can now knit one row with your main yarn. I'm using tension 10 on my machine, but you may be able to use 9 or even 8 depending on your yarn. So if you've never used your ribber before, this is one of the easiest ways to learn how to start using your ribber, because you don't have to worry about casting on, learning how to do all that in the beginning. All you have to do is hook up your ribber. And if you don't know how to do that, there's a video up here. So what we need to do now is we're going to skip 3 and we're going to pull out every 7th needle. We're going to skip 6, pull out the 7th. And then we'll have 4 on the end here. So when we seam up our 2 sides, we will have this extra. We'll have these 2 together, so we'll still have 6 in the middle. Now what you're going to do is push your ribber up, and I have to change my carriage to my ribber carriage. So before we knit, we have to actually transfer our stitches to our ribber. I'm going to use the double eye transfer tool and just transfer them that way. And we're just transferring them to the stitch straight across. So I have my ribber on P3 so that the needle I'm transferring to is directly across. Now that we have this all transferred, we want to make sure that our needles on the main bed are all the way back. And now we are going to knit 32 rows. So we'll reset our row counter to 0. Be sure to check your end stitches and make sure that they knit correctly. My yarn was too tight in my mast, and so my end stitches just needed to be knit manually. I like to pull down on my weights every time I go across just to make sure that it knits well and evenly. So now we're going to transfer these stitches back to the main bed. Then we're going to cut our yarn, and you'll need a length about 3 times your project width. So you want to use whatever you can get threaded with this very thick yarn. So you may need a tapestry needle. This is what I used with my other bulky yarn, but I feel like this super bulky is bulkier than my other super bulky. So you might want to check out like the differences. This just isn't wound very tight. The other super bulky yarn I had picked was just wound tighter. So I did get that in there. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to drop my ribber down. This is going to make a super cute pumpkin. And I'm just going to thread my needle through each stitch in this, going in the same direction. So I go in the front of the stitch, out the back. Then you can take your project off of your machine. So here's what we have now. Isn't that adorable? So this is our waste yarn up here, and this is the end that we just finished. So what we're going to do is we're going to just pull that string and cinch it up. Now this is going to be our outside. If you like this side better, you're welcome to use that, but it is designed to go this way. So now that I have it cinched up kind of as much as I can, I'm going to go through my end stitch here. And you can see I still kind of have a hole, which is fine. I'm just going to kind of close that up by going across and back and forth. So now we're going to stitch up our seam. So I want to kind of find that first stitch what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the center of my pumpkin and come up to that first stitch, so that now I can do the mattress stitch. Looking for that first stitch at the top, and we're going under the bar that is formed by that stitch. Okay, so now we're going back to the other side where we came out, and we're going down one. See, we can find a bar. We're going under that. You don't have to pull these tight at this point. Then go back to the other side and find a bar. This is just a mattress stitch. Now you're going to need some stuffing, and you'll actually need a lot more stuffing than you think. Well, maybe not this much. Okay, so we're just about ready to stuff this. What we want to do now is we're going to go around and we want to thread each stitch that we had going around where our waste yarn meets. Okay, now this is pretty easy, especially if you have a contrasting waste yarn, because you can see your waste yarn here, and these are the stitches that you want to catch. You do need to be careful to catch these edge stitches. You don't want to miss any, because otherwise you'll end up with a hole in your pumpkin. So make sure that you pull apart your stitches and make sure that you're getting each one. And we're just going to pull our yarn through each stitch. And all we're going to be doing is cinching it in the end, but before we cinch it, we want to stuff it. But before we stuff it, it's easier if you get your yarn through before you stitch it. Okay, so we got that threaded around. You can kind of see it because it's a slightly different color. So now what we're going to do is stuff it. And you are going to need like a ton more stuffing than you think you are. You just kind of want to fluff your stuffing. I like my pumpkins kind of squatty. I probably could have even put a touch more stuffing in that one. And now as I stuff it, I'm going to kind of cinch it a little bit just so I can fit more stuffing in there, so I can stuff it really good. If you think you have enough stuffing, then you should add a little bit more. What we're going to do is we're going to end up pulling this tight down like that. So you want to see if that's kind of the look you're going for. I'm going to stuff a little bit more in. We're going to finish cinching it up, and we are going to close our hole the same way we did before, just going back and forth. And then I'm going to stick my needle right down through the center. I'm going to push it all the way through so that it comes back out around the center. And then what I want to do is I want to really pull it so that it squishes back down. And then I'm going to put it over here and go back up through. So I'm going to pull this end to really squish it in and pull it back up through. There we go. See how you can squish that in? Got a nice little dimple there. I'm going to tie it to my end yarn from before while I'm also squishing it down some. Now you can decide which you want to be your bottom and your top. So I'm just going to, I think I'm going to knot this one more time. I'm going to snip off my strings. Now the last thing I'm going to do is use some hot glue and add on a little cinnamon stick for the stem. I have some grape stems I'm going to use. You can also use a pipe cleaner just to make a little curly vine, or you can use some yarn in your machine to make an I-cord. Let me know in the comments if you try out your own pumpkin. If you need another project for your knitting machine and you've never tried socks before, this is a fantastic way to make a super easy slipper sock because it is getting chilly out there. And make sure you give your knitting machine some love this week.